Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another video and today's topic is, what about all the beautiful buildings? I decided to do today's video because I have a lot of commenters who come here from the little season theory and look at the architecture of the past and use that as evidence, at least circumstantial evidence, that the 1,000-year earthly millennial kingdom already happened. And if you've been here before, you already know my stance on that whole topic. But I once was a part of that community. And before I became a part of that community, I was still considered a part of the truther community, in that I always liked looking into things that most people don't think about. And, this beautiful architecture is one of those things. Now, before the little season theory really became a thing, there were lots of theories for why some of these buildings that we think could never possibly have been built when they were. There were other theories about why or how they may have happened. There were theories of a golden age. There were theories of hidden from history society called Tartaria. There are theories, and still people today, who believe that these buildings came about before the flood, that they actually just survived the flood, and these are antediluvian buildings. There are just in general people who believe that they were just advanced civilizations and that we just weren't given the true history of, what our people have been able to do throughout time. But since the little season theory has gained, like I said, a lot of traction, many of those people don't think that there could possibly be any other explanation for these buildings. And so I'm going to tackle this a bit today. And some of my answers may be a little more mundane than what a lot of people are looking for, but our quest has to be about the truth, not about confirmation bias. Okay. So the comment here says, the beautiful buildings is what first convinced me. And she is talking about the little season. This is Joanne. She said they literally did not have the tools to create them in that period of time, especially if you look around what was being built then. And so she expressed a sentiment that many people in the truther community have, many people in the little season community, and it certainly may hold some truth, or at least it may be that we just haven't been told what they were actually capable of, or it could be something different. So let me just read to you my answer to her first, and then we'll talk. And what I replied, and I should also say that the comment about that they did not have the tools to create them in that period of time, it has become a talking point. A lot of different narratives, I guess you could say, because everything is a narrative, whether it's true or not, has talking points that you will hear people say often because they hear it all the time, so that then they start repeating it. And that is one of those things that I used to repeat all the time too. They didn't have the tools to create them in the period of time that they did. Okay, so here's my response to this comment, at least. I said, I once thought that too. If you spend some time looking into it, you will find that the mixture of grandeur versus primitive buildings had a normal explanation. The poorer classes simply didn't have the resources that were available to the wealthy, much like today. The workers would also often build makeshift shelters to use during construction of these buildings. We try to compare our skill sets with those of those time periods. There is no denying that we have been dumbed down, no matter our level of technology. We have also become lazy and do not put the effort into learning crafts and trades like those of the past did. People in the past were artisans. Today we have basic, ugly buildings being made by 3D printers. Technology does not always equal beauty and intricacy. It's very likely that the history we've been given about our ancestors is designed to hide just how dumb we've become. The buildings of a physical millennial kingdom, which has no scriptural backing, aren't required to explain these things. Always base your conclusions on scripture, not your surroundings. God bless. And unfortunately, that's something that is happening a lot in that community, is that looking at these old buildings or the hidden history is what is shaping their eschatology, instead of delving deeply into what the word says, not just focusing on a couple, cherry-picked verses, but actually delving deeply into scripture to see what it actually says about this 1,000-year millennial kingdom, or also even the little season, which in my opinion has been just exponentially blown out of proportion. It's like saying I'm going to the store for a little while, and then suddenly someone turns that into an entire epic fantasy, that little while that I said I was going to be going to the store. So anyway, with that being said, it is very true that people who would build buildings, let me see where I can find them. They would build makeshift shelters. I'm going to try to find where they're at. First of all, let me just show you. This is actually a building made with a 3D printer. I wasn't kidding when I said that. And here's the process of this happening. And so make no mistake about it, we have gotten extremely lazy. We are to the point of using 3D printers to make buildings, which quite honestly is very basic and very ugly if you compare it to, the buildings that I had on the screen when I first started out. On top of that, we have robots mowing our lawn for us now, doing our vacuuming for us. We have hands-free phones. Like we don't even want to use our hands anymore. And I get it when you're driving, but there are people who use them all the time. I was driving in the car today and I was listening to the radio station, and the radio station, one of the advertisements was a crocodile or a saltwater crocodile could chew off all of your fingers and you could still put their app on because all you need to do is tell your phone to do it. And it's true. Like we're getting to the point where you don't need to do any sort of physical exertion at all to get things done. We've got 3D printers making buildings and robots, mowing our lawn for us. Yeah, technology is great, but at what cost? It makes me think of the movie WALL-E. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. Because in WALL-E, this takes place in the future, and this is just a society that has gotten so sedentary that they don't even have the muscle structure to move anymore. They have to be carted around in these chairs all day long. They can't even stand up on their own. And they've got these screens just in front of their faces 24/7. That's all they do. And unfortunately, that's where it seems like our society is heading. So when we say things like, oh, well, they never would have been able to do things in that time period. Well, you know what? I think because we're comparing our standards to what we can do today to what they did. Because make no mistake about it, before we had all of this technology, we were not this sedentary. We were actually able to do things. I spoke to someone, and I mean an actual person, not someone just in the comment section, but actually spoke to someone who said that their grandfather used to be an artisan, and he was one of the people, no, not necessarily this one, but some of these grander buildings that people will look at and say, there's no way that they built that when they did. And he said, yes, my grandfather, that was what he did for a living. He was an artisan. That was their trade. And they would spend a lot of time doing this. And they were all experts in these things. And the way that the world works today, we don't have a lot of people spending time doing those things. And I'm going to say it again. We've gotten extremely lazy. Even if you compare women to the 19th century, I like reading the Little House on the Prairie stories to my daughters. Their days from sun up to sundown were work, doing things all day long. They were, making their own soap, making all of their food from scratch. They were milking their cows, making their own clothing. Very, very, very self-sufficient people who also very often had trades on the sides that they were able to do, compared to our consumer-driven society today. We don't have those skills. but we can't, impose our own inabilities on people of the past because they did not have things like technology distracting them and doing their work for them. Because I talked about the technology being a distraction, or sorry, taking our skills away from us because it's doing things for us, but it is a distraction. I'm sure that if I did not have my phone, and I'm calling myself out here, if I did not have my phone, I would get so much more done throughout the day. It's just that I'm constantly stopping. I'm answering comments, or I'm looking at something on Instagram, or I'm answering a text message. And this is all day long. And when they did not have those sorts of distractions, they had a lot more time on their hands to perfect the skills that they were being taught. Okay? Again, this is not to say that that these civilizations may have had more technology than what we've been taught. That is certainly a possibility. I would never say that that's not possible. But what I am saying is that that doesn't even have to be the case. Like this picture that we're looking at here, it says Tartarian buildings. I actually think this is from a World's Fair. And I've done videos on the World's Fairs, and so, and I had them all lumped in with the reset. And again, they very well could be from an advanced civilization, but I would scoff when they would say that many of the buildings were just built with plaster and were made to be temporary. And I would just laugh. I'm like, that's ridiculous. I had someone in the comments for one of those videos tell me, hey, you know what? I went on vacation. I went to Chicago and I got to go inside one of those buildings from the World's Fair. And it really was temporary stuff that they were using. She's like, you can feel it when you touch it, that they're not made to be buildings that you use for anything permanent. Even though they're still standing now, they were well made. Things were well made back then. I think we all know that the more modern we get, the worse our stuff is made. But she said, no, these things definitely, at least the one that I was in, she said, they were temporarily made. And you know what? I never replied to her comment because I didn't want to hear that. I considered myself a part of the truther community, but as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, it wasn't really truth that I was looking for. I was looking for confirmation bias. So I didn't want to hear somebody coming and telling me, hey, I was in that building. It really is temporary. I didn't want someone telling me my grandfather built those buildings and some of the buildings in that style. And I can tell you that that is actually what he did for a living. That was his area of expertise. I didn't want to hear that because it went against the whole narrative of, what I was exploring in my truther movement. But now it's time to look at some biblical cities, because again, we're in this notion of the only way that these beautiful buildings could have ever been built was if the 1,000-year kingdom already happened on earth, which there are no Bible verses that speak about an earthly millennial kingdom. And the only place that the 1,000 years is mentioned is Revelation 20. It's symbolic. It's not mentioned anywhere else in the entire Bible. Jesus never mentioned it. Daniel didn't mention it when he went over the sequence of events at the end of time, with the tribulation and the resurrection and judgment. He didn't mention it because it was symbolic. So let's just look at some of these civilizations that existed in these biblical time periods. This is a rendering of Nineveh, the city of Nineveh, which happened before the millennial kingdom would have happened. And you might be saying, well, that's just a rendering. We don't know if it actually looked like that. And what they're actually going off of is, I don't remember if that one's Nineveh too. I know this one is Nineveh too. But you'll say, oh, well, those are just renderings. You don't know if it actually looked like that. Well, you know what? But your theories about the millennial kingdom, we also don't know about that either. So if we're going to give some weight to that, we're also going to consider that these renderings could be pretty accurate, especially considering that they are going off of the records from these civilizations. Here we have yet another rendering of a civilization that happened in biblical times. I wish I would have written down where these were from. I'm pretty sure this one is Babylon. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm fairly certain this one here is Babylon. Ancient Babylon. And I believe this one is ancient Babylon too. I could be wrong because I'm just looking at this. But the fact remains, these are biblical cities. This is ancient Egypt. Or sorry, is this Thebes? No, this is ancient Egypt. Look at the buildings. And a lot of these ruins still exist in these places. So we know that it's not that far off. This is also ancient Egypt. Okay. This one. I'm really mad at myself for not writing these things down. I usually had 2 for each one. Okay, so this was Thebes. So this was, I believe, a Greek town or a Greek city in Egypt. And this is also another picture of Thebes. So again, we see this beautiful advanced architecture, as with the rest of what we've been looking at. And these are all things that would have happened before the people in the little season believed that the millennial kingdom happened. This is ancient Jerusalem, 1st century Jerusalem. I was amazed. My children and I watched a video the other day on the destruction of Jerusalem, and they did kind of like an artist depiction of what Jerusalem looked like at that time. I was blown away because it didn't look any more primitive than what many people are calling millennial kingdom buildings. It was absolutely stunning. This is a rendering of the temple. This is the outer court. Even out here, here's the city out here. This looks like the wall. This is not primitive stuff. This is a model of the temple. And again, it's slightly different because it's different artist renderings, but at the same time, no matter which one you look at, it was stunning. Most of us are familiar with the buildings from Athens, Greece, and a lot of people will say, oh, well, those are from the millennial kingdom. Could they have been? Sure. But the fact that we also have these descriptions of these cities in the Bible, which I should remind you that a lot of these beautiful cities in the Bible were actually judged because they were only beautiful outwardly. God does not, he doesn't treasure those outward material things. So here, let me see, what's this one? This is Rome. This is ancient Rome. This is ancient Rome. And again, I've had so many people tell me that Rome and Greece were part of the millennial kingdom. Okay. I don't know. I'm not going to say one way or the other. Well, I am going to actually, because an earthly millennial kingdom is not in the Bible, period. Now, if you want to say that they were part of another advanced civilization, it's a possibility, but it does not have anything to do with an earthly millennial kingdom, because I outright, flat out do not believe that 100%. It's not biblical. Okay. This is Caesarea, 1st century Caesarea. So, another one, beautiful seaport. This is also Caesarea, surrendering. And as we can see, and a lot of times we'll say, oh, well, all of the similarities in architecture, well, there was a lot of colonization going on. So, and here, this is just for me. I just pulled this up to show you that this is a little village that it says squatters' shacks. But I was watching a documentary. It could be wrong. I know it could be wrong. But many times when they were building these big, beautiful buildings, which remember, of course, just like now, some people have a lot of money. Some people have like no money. The people with a lot of money were paying these people with no money to build their big, beautiful buildings for them. And again, everyone's going to scoff and say, oh, well, there's no way that they were trained. How do you know? How do you know that? You can't compare them to our standards today. You simply can't. We are so dumbed down and just completely taken out of any skill sets that we have no room to say what other people were and were not capable of. So would it make more sense that these shacks here were built just as shelters for when they were building those other buildings? Yeah, I think that would make sense. Is it possible that these were just temporary shelters and that they actually found this city? Yes, that's possible too. It is possible that people were finding these big, beautiful buildings. There is absolutely zero evidence that it had anything to do with an earthly millennial kingdom, though. And I think that it is so important that people just start to recognize that. Let's go to Matthew 8:20. And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Jesus was very humble when he was here on the earth in his incarnation. He was born in a manger. Do you think that these exquisite buildings were going to impress him? When this, the earthly kingdom, that's not what he was interested in at all. Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Are those buildings, would that be considered treasure? Is that where their hearts would have been? I would say yes. So it certainly doesn't seem like that's a priority of God's, does it? Matthew 19:21, Jesus said to him, "If you would be perfect, go, sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." These outward beautiful buildings are not consistent with the way that Jesus lived while he was here during his ministry. There's no evidence that these buildings were linked to an earthly millennial kingdom. And I'm going to drive it home again. There are no verses in the Bible saying that there is going to be an earthly kingdom. Daniel 12 and Matthew 24 and 25 completely eradicate that idea. Am I saying that John was wrong in Revelation 20? No, because first of all, he never said there was going to be an earthly kingdom either. Okay? And when he said the 1,000 years, he was speaking symbolically. If you look up the Greek word for 1,000, kilioi, it has a figurative meaning of fullness and completeness. And it is the cube of 10. 10 is considered to be the perfect number. 1,000 is the cube of 10. 10 times 10 times 10. It is absolute completeness, absolute fullness. That is how John was using the number 1,000 in Revelation 20. It was a symbolic term. He wasn't saying that there was going to be a literal period of 1,000 years. There are no other verses in the entire Bible other than Revelation 20 that states this. And again, Jesus never spoke of it. Daniel never spoke of it. This was symbolic. He was symbolizing this transition from the old covenant to the new covenant. That was the millennium. So anyway, that is my response. People always ask me, well, how can we have all these beautiful buildings? I think, honestly, that we should look at the mundane responses first. And I know that years ago, I would have never thought that. I would have scoffed. I would have said, oh my gosh, they're normies. They're following the narrative. You know what? Sometimes you have to learn that you can go too far. You can go so far down the rabbit hole that you are just trying to find conspiracies in everything. And not everything is a conspiracy. Are some things? Sure, absolutely. And if this is a conspiracy, I I'm just going to say it right now. If it's a conspiracy that has nothing to do with the millennial kingdom. Period. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to become a channel member, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. Look, there we are in the future. Or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.